Okay, everybody, we'll start the meeting. If this is your first time back for a while, welcome back. This is our Wednesday Naples Mac User Group meeting, every Wednesday at 11:30. Next Wednesday, I want to remind you, we have Carrie Kelsky, Keith Kursky, and she is the local expert on identity theft. She spoke to us last year and was extremely interesting, and we invited her back this year. She started a program at Hodges University, and as you know, identity theft is becoming a bigger and bigger problem every single day. So I would suggest that you all be here next week for this critical meeting. She's an excellent speaker. She'll make the meeting extremely interesting, and it'll be a very worthwhile experience. Talking about security, Apple has recommended temporarily to uninstall Adobe Flash. Has everybody uninstalled Adobe Flash? Okay, if you haven't, do it. And don't install it again until you hear from us. Yes?
Reader is not involved, just Adobe Flash.
Right.
Because everybody seems to use Adobe Reader.
Right, just Adobe Flash.
You need a special program.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about that here in a second. By the way, Adobe Flash, if you want to see whether, and I actually put it back on here today, just so I can show you how to take it off. It's located in System Preferences. As a matter of fact, I thought I had removed it, and I was surprised to see it was here this morning, so I'm concerned that it popped back up here. But anyway, here's where it is. Can everybody, this is System Preferences. It's in the last row. And when you do get it back, and when you do reinstall, and Apple comes out and says and tells us that everything is okay to reinstall it, make sure you go into it and go into updates and make sure you check off allow Adobe to install updates. Because if they have a problem, they will probably catch it immediately and install an update to solve the problem, if they have any problem.
So, George, you said check off. You need to make sure that it's checked.
Check, right. And anyway, so if you're in the discussion group, I had sent this out. Is everybody pretty much in the discussion group? Okay. If you're in the discussion group, you should have received this from me last week. And they claimed that this week, sometime, Adobe would have everything fixed, but until we hear from Apple, don't assume it's fixed. Just get it off your computer. And on this thing that I sent through, it tells you how to uninstall Flash from your Mac. And I have 10.5 and later. Use this uninstaller. And I'll go into here and I'll uninstall it. Just click on here, open. And this will install. You have to sign in. Everybody pretty much know how to do this.
thanks to your email, that's what I did last week.
Can't hear you.
I said, thanks to your email, I did that last week to my computer and George's.
Okay. What I'm concerned about is I thought I had uninstalled it, maybe it was doing that.
Yeah, I'll go with
Just takes a couple seconds. Says it's been removed and it's done, so I'm all set. We'll just go back and check to see if it's gone. System preferences, no longer there. Okay.
George, is there something that replaces that?
Not at the moment.
You had something about Google Chrome though.
What's that?
You said if you needed to use Google Chrome.
Yeah, there's part of the article I sent out or part of it, actually it's on here. What to do if you need Flash, if you find yourself with absolutely no choice but to use Flash. Maybe you have a Flash-based business application or whatever. Install Google Chrome. Chrome includes a special version of Crash that runs inside a sandbox with updates handled by Google. If you can't or won't install Chrome, a good fallback is Mark, this particular website. And if you go into the discussion group and search, you can find this.
Was there anything, George, relative to PCs
Oh, no,
that they're having trouble with?
I don't know.
too?
Don't know.
but it's not on the phone or,
What's that?
it's not on the phone or the iPad, just the computer.
Yeah, you don't have Flash on the iPad or the phone. It won't allow you to install it. And there are some apps that will claim they can do it, but I haven't had any luck with it. Okay,
George,
yes.
how has that affected your logging onto your, like your bank and brokers? Seems that most of this.
I haven't had any problems.
Really?
Well, let's,
And other people who've uninstalled it, do you not have any problems accessing your normal stuff? I guess not.
let me just see something.
In the new version of OS 10, there are a bunch of new changes in the Photos
I didn't
application.
mean to start.
There are some that might jump right out at you in certain.
Let me see here. No trouble with Scott Trade. No trouble with Schwab. So I don't think, and there was no Morgan Stanley, I had no trouble. So there's no issue there. I haven't had a single issue, and I was surprised because I used to. So maybe a lot of these have worked it out so they don't use Flash. Yes.
I had a problem with a conference that Vanguard was presenting that I don't have any trouble getting into my account.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably where, because I often, when I try to get into those conferences, you have to have Flash usually, and you have to have, what is it, Java? And so that makes sense. So you might have some problems if you partake in any of these conferencing calls with anybody. All right, there were some things last week that we didn't finish from El Capitan that I just wanted to run through, and it won't take too long. And then I want to talk about, and then I want to show you a video, because there's always a lot of questions about Time Machine. And Linda just did an excellent, as part of El Capitan, they did an excellent video on Time Machine. So let's take a look here. One of the things, there have been some improvements to the photo app in El Capitan. And this is what this one is on.
In the new version of OS 10, there are a bunch of new changes in the Photos application. There are some that might jump right out at you, and certainly a few that are not so obvious at first glance. So I'm going to launch the Photos application, and I like to work with photos in the full screen mode, so I'll hit the green button up in the top left to get into the full screen mode. And first, I want to talk about albums and sorting. In the previous version of Photos in OS 10, you could browse through albums on the sidebar on the left side, but I don't see the sidebar now. Well, you can still get to the sidebar. All you need to do is go into the View menu. So since I'm in full screen mode, I'll push my mouse cursor all the way to the top edge. The menus will pop up. I'll go into View. And the option I'm looking for under the View menu is Show Sidebar. So now I've got the sidebar and I've got all of the albums that I've created, so I can still work with the sidebar if I prefer. But there's also a separate Albums view. So you're only going to see that if you have the sidebar turned off. So I'm going to go back to the View menu. I'm going to hit Hide Sidebar. And so now I see these buttons across the top of the window. And I'm looking for the one that says Albums. When I click on that, I go to a screen that's dedicated specifically to albums. So of course, I see the albums that I've created myself, but there are also a few new albums that the computer creates for me. If you take pictures on an iPhone and synchronize them with iCloud Photo Library, then you'll see the pictures that you took on your iPhone synchronized here. And you'll see some automatic albums based on how those photos were taken. So for example, if you take a photo with the front-facing camera on an iPhone, they'll automatically be sorted into this album labeled Selfies. So if I open this up, these are all pictures that I took with the front-facing camera. I'll double-click on this to get out of that. And I want to go back to the albums view, so I'll just hit this back button up in the top left to go back to all my albums. There's also an album setup that will store all of the pictures you take in the panorama mode on your iPhone, as well as screenshots that you take on your iPhone. Below that, of course, you'll see the albums that I've created myself. In the new version of the Photos application, you can change how those albums are sorted. So I'm going to go into the View menu up at the top. I'm going to go to Sort, and let's say I want to sort these so that the oldest album is first. I click on that, and they're already sorted that way. So let me go back to the View menu, back to Sort. Let's sort by newest first, and that'll change the order. Or I might go in there and I can sort them by name, and that'll change the order. And if you change the sort order here, if you go back and turn the sidebar on by again going into View, Show Sidebar, the order of those albums in the sidebar will reflect the order that you've sorted here in the album screen. So next, I want to go into my list of all photos. So I'll just click on Photos here in the top of the sidebar. And I want to talk about some new options for working with information on photos. So for example, I'm going to select one of my photos here, and I want to get information about that photo. There are a few ways to do that. I could go into the Window menu and choose Info, or I could use the keyboard shortcut Command-I. So let's do that. Select the photo, Command-I, and that brings up the information window. The first thing that you may notice is that geotagging is now included in the Photos application. That means that you can store and view the location where a photo was taken. I can see that this photo was taken at Chillon Castle in Switzerland. If you take a picture with a location-aware camera, like an iPhone, it will automatically tag your location to the picture when you take it. So I don't have to set the location on this photo. It was there automatically. But if I look at a different picture that was taken with a traditional camera with no GPS built in, so for example, if I scroll all the way up to the top here, some of my older photos do not have GPS location. I can select one of these. I'll do Command-I to see information. And of course, I do not see a location assigned to this photo. But I can easily add the location manually by going to the Info window, clicking on this line that says Assign a Location, and doing a quick search. So let's say this was taken on the beach in Carpinteria, California. So I can start searching here, and it actually finds Carpinteria State Beach. That's going to be good enough. I'll click on that, it assigns that location, and it shows it on the map. And I can change the location after the fact. Later, I might remember, no, I actually took this picture in Santa Barbara. I can come back to the same information window, click on this location again, and just search for something different. So I'll select Santa Barbara here, and now that's been applied, and I've got a new location. Now, another thing you can do in this information window is change the title of a photo. So I might click on this field that says add a title, and type in a new title for that picture. Now, that's not a new feature. That's something you could do in the previous version. But what is new is that you can change the title of several photos at the same time, or change the location of several photos at the same time. So what I'm going to do is select several photos just by dragging and drawing a box around them. So now I have several photos selected, and assuming I still have the info window open, I can change information about those pictures all at the same time. So they have various titles, and I see a location here. But let me make sure that the same location is set for all of these pictures. So I'll do a quick search for Santa Barbara, and I'll just choose an option here, and it will reassign that location to all the pictures that are currently selected. And I can click where it says various titles, and I'm just going to type in Santa Barbara beach photos, hit return. So now if I click away from these pictures, and then I select just one of them, I see it's got that location and that title. Select another one, has that location and that title. So I was able to change the location and the titles of these photos as a batch. Great, so I'm going to close my information window. And the last thing I want to look at is something very useful in the editing tools. So let's just grab one of my pictures. I'll double click on this one, and that takes me to the full screen view. Now I want to access the editing tools. I do not see the edit button on screen, again, because I'm in the full screen mode. But if I push my mouse cursor up to the top edge, I get these buttons, and I can hit the edit button right here. And that gives me my editing tools on the right side. So here I have all of the editing tools that I had in the previous version of Photos. But there's a new option down here at the bottom labeled Extensions. I'll click on that, and we'll see that right now I don't have anything here. But the idea is that third-party software developers can create new editing tools, which you can install, and those new editing tools will be available as extensions in the Photos app. And then you could use those extensions to edit your photos right here in this application. So very soon, maybe even when you're watching this course, you should start to see photo editing applications available in the Mac App Store that include these extensions. And even some extensions by themselves that you can install from the Mac App Store. Once you install them, they'll appear in this list. If you have some extensions installed that you want to enable or disable, you can come here to this menu, and you can click on the option that I do see here, the one labeled More, and that will jump you over to System Preferences, and it's already in the section on Extensions. And here in the Photos category, you should see a list of all of the extensions that you have installed on your computer that can be used in the Photos app. And from here, you can enable and disable those individually. So I'll hit Done on this picture to get out of editing mode. So I hope some of these new features in the photo editing application will be helpful as you organize and edit your photos.
Bob, what do you think of that?
If you use Disk Utility,
One
the
second.
tool for you.
Yeah, I hope they coordinate with Adobe. That would be great.
Yeah, I think they're going to. I'll show you in a couple seconds, because I got some of those extensions.
That would be really great.
So then at that point, you might use the program periodically. No, I think that's going to be a major plus, because and there's already some activity in the App Store where they've come out with some of the
They had a
extensions.
big groove. Adobe had a big groove in
What?
Lightroom. Adobe made a big groove in Lightroom. You might lose some customers. Big.
Formatting and partitioning drives, then you'll see some differences in OS X El Capitan. The functionality is most...
What happened there? I lost my move.
If you use disk utility, the tool for erasing, formatting, and partitioning drives, then you'll see some differences in OS X El Capitan. The functionality is mostly the same, but the interface is more streamlined, and you do get more information about your drives. I'm going to launch disk utility. I'll do that by going into Finder, into my Applications folder, and I want to go into the Utilities folder inside of Applications. That's where I'm going to find disk utility. So now disk utility is running. I'm going to close this Finder window so we can focus on the disk utility window. So disk utility is where you go to get information about the drives you have connected to your computer. And just like in previous versions, you see all of the drives that you have connected to your computer on the far left side, as well as the volumes contained on each drive. So you can see I have the main internal drive with my main system volume. And then I have this external hard drive. This is one physical external hard drive with 3 different partitions. So they show up on my desktop as if they were 3 separate hard drives. That's how these separate partitions or separate volumes work. I'm going to plug in a USB memory stick, and we'll see that show up on the desktop. So that's right here. And over in the sidebar on the left of disk utility, we see 1 drive with 1 partition. One great new feature here is that you can now get an idea of how much space is being used on each volume and what types of files are using that space. So with my main system drive selected, I can see how much space is being used by apps, how much space is being used by photos and movies and so on. And I could select a different drive and I can see what sort of files are taking up space on that drive. And if I go to my USB stick, well, it's empty, so nothing's taking up space on that drive. So next, I want to talk about erasing, formatting, and partitioning a drive. And I'm going to use my USB stick to demonstrate this because I don't mind erasing it. Please be very careful when using disk utility and pay close attention. I don't want you to erase a drive accidentally. So erasing a drive and formatting a drive are the same operation. So since there's only 1 volume on my memory stick, I could choose either that volume or I could choose the main drive. And then I'll go up to where it says erase up at the top of the window. I'll click on that. So I'm going to erase and reformat the 1 volume on this drive. I'll start by giving it a name. Currently the volume is called USB stick, but after it's erased, it'll have a different name. So just to give it something different, I'm going to call it USB memory. Next, I'll need to choose the format of the drive, and this is very important. Different types of computers store files differently on a drive. So if you're using this drive only on a Macintosh computer, your best choice will be OS X Extended Journal. If you'll be using this drive only on a Windows computer, then your best choice would be MS-DOS FAT. But if you're using a drive on both a Mac computer and a Windows computer, maybe you're moving it between different computers and you need to access files on both types of computers, then your best choice would be MS-DOS FAT. That's because a Windows computer will read only FAT, and a Mac computer will read both FAT and Mac OS X Extended. So I'm going to format this drive as MS-DOS FAT. Now it is worth noting, if you format a drive as FAT, of course it will work on a Mac, but it will be slower than that same drive if it were formatted as Mac OS X Extended. But of course, if you need to use the drive on both a Windows computer and a Mac, your best choice is this FAT format. And I'm not going to worry about scheme, that's not important for what we're talking about. Now I can hit erase. It will erase the contents of that drive and it will reformat it as MS-DOS FAT. And I'll hit done here. Now there's something kind of interesting that just happened here. I just formatted this drive as FAT, so now I see the drive on the sidebar on the left, but I do not see the volume. I've seen this happen when I format drives as FAT, and it's really no big deal. If you quit and restart disk utility, then you will see that volume there. So I'm not going to worry about it for now. Next, I want to talk about partitioning a drive. This has changed significantly from previous versions of OS X. Partitioning means that I'm going to set this drive up to have multiple volumes, which I can format differently and use as if they were separate drives. Just like what I have on this external drive here with 3 separate partitions, which I see show up as 3 separate drives on my desktop. So we're going to do the same thing to my USB memory stick. So I'm going to select the drive, and I'm going to go to the button at the top that says Partition. Now when we first look at this, most of my options are disabled. I don't have the plus and minus buttons, I don't have this option for size, and I don't have Apply. Those options are grayed out. You see, when you're dealing with a drive that has a single FAT formatted volume, then you're not able to change the partition options. That's because partitioning in El Capitan is built around the idea of adding and resizing existing partitions, which is not something that an FAT formatted drive can do. So for now, I'm just going to reformat this drive again as a Mac OS X journaled format. And I can always change the format of a partition to FAT later. So for now, I'm going to cancel this, and we'll just do that erase operation again real quick. Call this USB memory. Format it as OS X extended journaled. I'll hit erase. Done. And once that's finished, I can again select the drive, go into partition, and now I do have all of those options available to me. So before I partition this drive, I want to put some files onto it. So I'm going to open up Finder, I'm going to go to my Documents folder. I'm just going to drag a few folders onto my USB memory stick. This is going to be very important as we talk about some options in partitioning. I want you to keep in mind that this USB memory stick is not empty. It has some folders of files stored on it. Okay, so let's go through the operation. I'll select my drive, I'll go to partition, and let's look at what we have available. Currently, there is one partition, 15.2 gigabytes in size, and it's called USB memory. There are a few ways of creating another partition. As I create another partition, I'm going to change the size of this current partition. So one way to do this would be to grab the little circle at the edge of the larger circle and drag that around. So I'm changing the size of my original partition. But in doing that, I've now created a second partition. So I can click back and forth between them. This one is called USB memory, 6.9 gigs in size. This one is called untitled, 8.2 gigs. So it's always going to add up to a total of, 15.2 gigabytes. So I'm going to give this partition a name. I'm going to call it USB memory 2. And let's look at another way of adding a partition. I could hit the plus button down here at the bottom, and now I have a third partition. And of course, I could grab the handles to change the sizes between them. So this one's called USB memory. This one is called untitled. This is USB memory 2. Let's change this third one to Windows. And you might have guessed what I'm going to do. I'm going to change the format for this partition to MS-DOS FAT. So I can have different formatting on these different partitions. So you might want to play around with these options, figure out how you want to set up the partitions on your drive. I'm going to leave it set this way, and I'm going to hit Apply. And this will take a minute or two to go through the process. Now that the repartitioning is done, I can just hit Done here. And now I see my drive on the left side and the 3 volumes on that drive. And over here on the desktop, I can see it's represented as 3 different drives. And if I go into Finder, I see those 3 different drives are listed here. Now what's really interesting here is if I select the original partition, USB memory, the files that were on this drive are still there. So changing the size of a partition or adding partitions do not require you to erase the drive or erase the partition. And I can always go back into this drive later in Disk Utility, go back into partitions, and I can make some changes. I don't have all of the same options that we had before, but I have some of the options. So for example, if I select this partition here, this is the USB memory 2 partition formatted as OS X extended. I am able to remove this partition. I can just hit the minus button here to remove it. But I'm not able to remove the original partition, and I'm not able to remove an MS-DOS FAT formatted partition. Now I can also change the format of one of these partitions. I can select one of them, I can go to Format, I can choose a different format, and then I can hit Apply. The one thing that I definitely would not want to do, unless I was really, really sure, is change the formatting of a partition that currently has files on it. Changing the formatting of a partition will erase any contents on that volume. Now, if I wanted to completely erase this drive, removing all of the partitions and reset it back to one single volume, what I would do is cancel this, make sure I have the drive selected, then do that same operation we did earlier. Erase, give it a name, choose the format, and then erase that drive, and it would erase everything, remove all but one partition, and leave this as a single drive with a single partition. There are a few other new features in the disk utility application, but those are the main highlights. Hopefully, this will make it easier for you to manage drives in OS X.
Any questions on
In this course, we've seen several of the biggest updates in OS X El Capitan, but I also wanted...
Any questions on the disk utility? That's, by the way, about 3 or 4 years ago, my son-in-law said, I have all my pictures from the kids for 12 years on this external hard drive, and why don't you do me a favor and copy it onto your Apple and put it onto a separate hard drive or whatever. And we plugged in the external hard drive he gave me with 12 years or 10 years of kids' pictures on it. And it was formatted in some other format, and we erased, we thought we had erased the entire drive.
Ooh.
And of course I apologized 10,000 times, although he's the one that plugged it into my computer. And but the bottom line was he had a very good friend at work who knows how to recover the information, and he was able to get it recovered, thank God. But you got to be very careful when you go to reformat and so forth. So if you do that, either take a look at the Linda tutorial, that's not available. Google it, and I'm sure there's 300 YouTube videos on how to do it also, and follow it while you're doing it. Yes.
How would I know what kind of format the sewing program we have that runs on the regular computer is? And could I then have another drive or something like this MS-DOS back thing to do the sewing program in that? We got a Mac computer because the sewing program is keeping us, from buying a Mac because it's on another kind of platform, but I don't know what platform it is.
No, it's that sewing program that I know my sister-in-law has it is only made for PC.
So partitioning it part of the PC?
No.
Or that won't work? Okay.
No. You'd have to use Parallels or Fusion
Yeah.
and run the operating system, the Windows operating system on it.
Thank you.
But I wouldn't even get into it. I think you're better off buying a $300 PC and running your, if you have to run PC programs, run them on a separate PC. Don't even get it onto the Apple
Because
computer.
like the program is $300 if I buy a new program for.
Eventually, most likely, they'll come out with an Apple version or an app or something. Okay, yes.
So that just the act of plugging it into your Mac made the Mac do something different?
No, it actually gave me an option. It gave him an option, and he said okay or something. And what it did is it just reformatted the whole. He should have immediately ejected it.
Yeah.
I think it says whether or not he wanted to initialize it or something, which means format.
There was no undo button.
No.
Take a few minutes and check out some of those smaller, easy-to-miss updates scattered in several applications. The first one I want to look at is something pretty small in Finder. I'm going to open up a Finder window, and just as an example, I'll go to my Movies folder and we'll play around with these files. So I want to change the name of this file, and there are several ways to do that in OS X. But there's a new way in El Capitan. I can right-click on any file, and now in the right-click menu, there's an option for rename. So when I click on that, it changes the name of that file into an editable field. And I can make my changes here. And when I'm done, I just press return and that name is set. So yeah, that's a pretty small feature. Let's look at something a little more significant. So I'm looking at a video file here. And if I double click on it, it should open in QuickTime X. If that's not your default video player, for example, let me quit this, you could also right-click on it, choose Open With, and then choose QuickTime Player. So I want to make sure I'm opening this in QuickTime Player, not QuickTime 7, but the newer version of QuickTime. So I'm going to turn the volume down on this video, and then I'm going to play it. Here in QuickTime 10, you should now see an AirPlay option. That's this button right here. If you have an Apple TV connected to your network, and if your computer is connected to the same network as your Apple TV, you can stream this video from QuickTime to the Apple TV full screen. All you need to do is click on this button, and if you do have an Apple TV connected to the same network that this computer is connected to, you should see that Apple TV on this list. So when I click on that, instead of playing the video on my computer screen, it's now streaming that video full screen to my television through the Apple TV. And of course, when I want to stop that, if I want to stop the stream and just play the video back here on my computer screen, I can always click on that AirPlay icon again and hit this option that says Turn Off AirPlay, and now the video is playing on my computer screen again. I'm going to pause playback. And I'll quit QuickTime Player. So this next one is not really something that I would call a feature, more like something that you should be aware of. If you use Dashboard, you may notice that it's not there anymore. If I hold the Control key on my keyboard and hit the left arrow, in Yosemite, that would have jumped me over to Dashboard. Or I could swipe on the trackpad with 3 fingers and that would jump me over. But now in El Capitan, that's not going to work anymore. Well, Dashboard is not gone completely. It's just turned off by default. So if you use Dashboard and you need to get it back, what you'll need to do is go into System Preferences. So I'll click on the Apple menu in the top left. I'll go to System Preferences. Then I'll go into the option for Mission Control. And I see this option here. Dashboard is currently turned off. So I can easily re-enable Dashboard either as a space or as an overlay. So if you choose Overlay and you use the keyboard command to activate Dashboard, which in this case I can see down here, the Show Dashboard keyboard shortcut is F12. So with Overlay enabled, if I hit F12 on my keyboard, Dashboard comes up, overlaid on top of whatever's on my screen. The other option, of course, would be the more traditional route. I could set this to enable Dashboard as a space. Then if I hold the Control key on my keyboard and hit the left arrow, it'll jump over to that space. I'll hit Control right arrow to go back. Or if you're using a computer with a touchpad, you can swipe with 3 fingers to go over to the dashboard. So that's going to be important if you use Dashboard. You're going to have to enable it again in OS X El Capitan. And lastly, I'm going to mention something that I mentioned much earlier in the course, but it's so small it's worth saying again in case you missed it. If you're having a hard time seeing where your mouse cursor is, all you need to do is shake the mouse cursor for a second and you'll see it get bigger on the screen. Now this is something that does not show up in this recording, so you're not going to see the effect in this movie. But give it a try on your El Capitan computer. Just shake your mouse cursor and you'll see the arrow will grow bigger, which makes it much easier to find. I'm sure you'll come across some other changes as you get used to OS X El Capitan. But I think this course has shown you the most important major changes and a handful of the smaller ones as well.
Okay, I just want to move along here for a moment to Time Machine, which I think we always have a lot of questions about. Oh, I wanted to show you before we went there, one thing about photos, some of the extensions. Let me see if I have a photo. So here's a photo that's opened in Photos. And I go to Edit. And I have this extension down here. And I think I have Pixelmator on my computer, and they had an update which included some extensions for the photo app. And I had Snap Peel on here, which has an extension. So, and then all you have to do is press on the Pixelmator to store it, and then you get all the options here. So this opens up the world to you as far as editing your pictures. With lots of opportunity for other programs to step in. So that I think is a major improvement. Any questions on that?
George, Bridget, how do you install those extensions?
You go to the App Store and just look for Photo App Extensions,
Okay.
okay? And then every day they're adding to it. Most of them you probably have to purchase. You might even have things on your computer that will update. If you have any photo apps on your computer, as you begin to update them, they're going to have some extensions for the photo app. And when you update them, they will begin to show up in here.
How did you get to that, George?
What?
Well, you went to the photo, but how did you get?
What was the question there? I'm sorry.
How did you get to the selection on the right-hand side?
I went, to Edit, and that popped up with all the normal editing functions. I went down to Extension, and then now under Extension, since I updated Pixelmator, I have one from Pixelmator, and I hit that, and now I have all those options. Yes?
George, this is a sidelight on photos on your iPhone with iOS 9 have a bunch of extensions that automatically appear, including Photoshop Express.
So it's the same thing on the iOS device?
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody pretty much understand what Marty just said? You have the same opportunity if you're using this app on your iPad and iPhone. Yes?
You know, when I opened up the extension window, go to Photos, and I noticed that it had on the instruction screens too, not enabled on the Photos, not enabled. You know, where you have, if you're at the extension screen, you know, yeah, it's buried behind. Yeah. Oh no, that's not it. Okay.
Here, hold on a second.
Okay, now go to Edit. All right, down to Extensions. Double click on Extensions. More. Sorry, more.
More?
Yeah.
Okay, you're going to get this other one.
Okay, Photos. See, on mine it says not enabled. And on the lynda.com screen, his also was not enabled.
Because he hasn't brought in, he hasn't downloaded any of the apps with the extension.
Apps with the extension, okay. Because
Or-
when I tried
or-
to upgrade, it says not available yet.
Right. Pixelmator sent me, I have Pixelmator on here for years, and they had an update, and the update included an extension
Oh,
for the app.
okay.
And the the same thing with Snap Heal. I've had that one on for, I've used that for years. That's where you can erase something off your picture. And there was a update on it through the App Store, and it brought it into the photo app through extension.
So you said you go to the App Store and the app is called Photos Extension?
What you want to search for is photo extensions. Photo app extension.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, now let's go over setting up the Time Machine backup. How many of you use Time Machine? Oh, that's good. Most everybody? Okay, so let's just run through here a second. I'll give you some. How many of you have restored from Time Machine? I've done it many, many times. A major asset, one of the best things Apple.
The easiest way to set up a backup on your Mac is by using Time Machine, which is a utility that does automatic backups and keeps your backup updated over time. It's also the easiest way to restore files that you've lost. You can restore all of your data in one move, or you can restore individual files that you've accidentally deleted. The catch is that you have to use an external hard drive, and you have to either leave that hard drive plugged into your computer or at least make sure it's connected on a regular basis. There are a few ways to set up Time Machine. If you're using a brand new blank hard drive that you've never connected to your computer before, you're going to have the easiest option. So I'm going to start by connecting a blank new hard drive to my computer. I've never connected it to this computer before. It plugs into the USB port, so I'll just plug it in. Once that hard drive is connected, you should see this question. It's asking you if you want to use it for your Time Machine backup. And in most cases, you just have to hit this button that says Use as Backup, and your backup will be set. You just leave that hard drive connected, and everything is ready to go. Now, I want to see what it looks like if you do not see this question pop up on screen. So I'm going to go through the manual process of setting up a Time Machine backup. This takes a little bit more effort, but it really isn't much. So for now, I'm just going to hit Decide Later, and that will make that question go away. To manually set this up, you go into System Preferences, then to the option for Time Machine. Here I can see that Time Machine is turned off, and I have an option to select my backup disk. So I'll do that. I'll just hit this button, and then I'll choose the drive that I want to use for my backup. Now you do have to have an external hard drive connected, and then you should select it here, then hit Use Disk. Now I can see that Time Machine is turned on, and it's giving me this little countdown. So in about 113 seconds, it's going to start this backup. So what I can do now is just leave this connected and let the computer run the backup when it's ready. And this is going to take a little bit of time to back up my computer. It really depends on how much data you currently have on your machine. It could take 30 minutes, it could take a few hours. So I'm going to let this sit and I'm going to let it perform the backup. And then I'm going to skip forward in time a little bit so that we can see what we can do after the backup has been set up and how we can restore files if they've been lost. So I'll stop here and then I'll jump forward in time a little bit. Now some time has passed and my initial backup is complete. So now we can talk about what you should do if you ever need to restore lost files. One scenario is pretty easy. If you misplace a file or accidentally delete a file, make an update to a file you want to undo, or if a file just gets corrupted, you can use your Time Machine backup to restore that file. So let's set up a scenario here. I'm going to go into Finder, go into my Documents folder, I'll go into this No Obstacles folder, and I'm going to pick out one of these files here. I'm just going to take this document called All Recipes. I'm going to put this in the trash, and I'm even going to empty the trash. Okay, so now I've removed a file called All Recipes from the No Obstacles folder. Now, at a completely different time, I might decide, whoa, that was a mistake. I need that file back. So you do need to have your Time Machine backup drive connected, of course, but I'm going to go back into Finder. I'm going to go back into the folder where I would expect to find that file if it was not gone. With this Finder window open to that folder, I'm going to jump into Launchpad, and I'm looking for an application simply called Time Machine. I should be able to find it in this other folder. There it is. I'll click on that, and that will open up the Time Machine interface. So now I'm going to see the Finder window that I have open sort of cascading back through time. Now, usually when you go to this screen, you're going to see several versions of this window moving back in time. But since I just set up this backup and I don't have a large backlog of updates to the backup, I only see one window hiding behind the current window, and then just a bunch of empty frames cascading through the back. But that's going to be fine. That'll still get us through this scenario. What I can do is click on one of these windows in the past. So I'm going to click on this one here, and that one's going to come forward, and I can see the file that I'm missing is here. Now, in a real scenario, you might need to click further back in time, and you can use these arrows here to go forward and backward in time. But for this scenario, I found the file that I want. So I'm going to select it in this previous version of this folder, and then I can hit restore, and it brings that file back to the future. And of course, it's going to drop that file back in the folder where it was before it got deleted. And now it's here. And now I can continue working with that file. So that's one way you could use Time Machine, to restore a file that was accidentally deleted or lost. Now, the other scenario is when your computer fails completely. Maybe your entire hard drive is broken and you replace the hard drive, or maybe you replace the whole computer. Maybe your computer was stolen. What you'll do is you'll get your replacement computer, then you can restore your backed up files to that computer when you set the new computer up. When you get your new computer, you can restore files from your backup when you do the initial setup process right out of the box. During that initial setup, when you go through the prompts the first time you run the computer, you'll see a screen where you can migrate data from your backup. That's the best option, and I recommend you do that if possible. And don't worry, we're going to see what that screen looks like in just a second. But if you're dealing with a computer like this one, where you've already gone through the initial setup and you've already created a user account, you can still get to that screen to restore your data. All you need to do is go into a tool called Migration Assistant. You could get to that through Launchpad, or you could open up Finder, go to your Applications folder, to Utilities, and open it up here. It's called Migration Assistant. So I'll double click to open that, and then I'll hit Continue, and I'll need to put in the password I set for this computer, and I'll hit OK. And that will take you to a screen that looks like this. And this is actually the same screen that you would see if you were doing the initial setup of a brand new computer right out of the box. So whichever way you get to it, this is where you can restore from the Time Machine backup. So you just want to choose this option here to restore from a Mac Time Machine backup or startup disk. I'll hit Continue, and now it's going to search for the Time Machine drive. So you do need to have your Time Machine backup drive connected to this new computer. So I'm going to go ahead and plug that in now. Once that drive is mounted, it'll show up right here. I can select it, and I can go through this process. So I've selected it, I'll hit Continue. I'm going to select the item that appears here that represents my backup. I'll hit Continue there. And now it shows me everything that it's going to restore to this computer. All of the applications that I had installed on the computer that I backed up, as well as the user accounts. Now, on the computer where I set up this Time Machine backup, I had 2 user accounts, one called Joseph Brazzi and one called Nick Brazzi. So it's going to restore all of the files in both of those user accounts. But I see something interesting here. You're not going to see this if you just started up a brand new computer fresh out of the box and you got to that Migration Assistant screen as you were doing the initial setup. You might see this issue if you've already set up your computer and you've already created a user account, and that user account has the same name as the user account in your backup. So that's what I'm dealing with here. The computer that I'm working on now already has a user account that has the same name as one of the user accounts on my backup. I'm not worried about it. We're going to deal with this in just a moment. It says this user needs attention, so we're going to deal with that here in just a moment. From here, we can see what's going to be restored. I can hit Continue. And now I have to deal with that duplicate user account. Now, since I'm dealing with a brand new computer and I have not put any files on it yet, then I don't mind replacing the user account that's currently on this computer in favor of the user account on the backup. So I'm going to choose this option. But if I wanted to, I could keep both user accounts. I would just have to give a new name to the user account that's being restored from the backup. But I'm going to go ahead and do the replace option. I'll hit continue. And now this is going to take some time. This is going to restore all of my files and my applications from my backup. But once that's done, this new computer will be all set up just as my old computer was the last time my Time Machine backup updated. So Time Machine is a pretty easy and effective backup tool, and it's already built into OS X. So I definitely recommend you get it set up unless you use some other backup solution.
Any questions? Marilyn?
George,
Thanks for joining me
What's that?
for OS X El Capitan Essential Training.
in El Capitan, can you put your Time Machine in the top menu bar?
Yes, sure.
It's the same as previously, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, mine's right there.
Because you can actually go into Time
Right.
Machine from there.
It's in
Right.
preferences.
Okay.
You know OS X El Capitan, you should.
Let me turn this off. What was that, Bob?
I think that's in preferences. Just
In a good
click
position to start learning pretty much any application that you might.
Sarah? Yeah.
Down here. When you do the
Want to learn
restoring
on
of the
My platform.
transferring on the new computer,
I recommend you do.
One second, go ahead.
do you have a chance when you do this to put from the backup to the new computer? Do you have a chance to not load it with everything, like some of the stuff you don't want to put on the new computer? Some of the files you don't want on the new computer.
Yeah, there were check marks there.
Okay.
There was some check marks.
You can
Bob?
see.
That's just a tip. One of the little nuisances that pops up so many times that it becomes a big nuisance is the utility folder, which is at the bottom of the applications.
What was that?
The utility folder is at the bottom of the applications. The thing to do is to make an alias, put a space in front of it, and then it pops up right up at the top. It's much easier to get the utility items out of that folder.
Did everybody understand what Bob just said?
Yeah.
Yes.
You did or you didn't? I see a head going this way. So that means you did not. All right, so I'm going to show you what he's talking about. Let me get out of this screen.
That's a great tip.
Okay. So for example, if I open up the Finder and I go to Applications, there's a lot of applications that you're going to want to get to periodically that are in the utility folder. And it's sitting way down here in alphabetical order. And so what Bob is saying is you can right click on that and where's my option to?
Right next to
Right
it.
below was
One
make
down. That's it. One more up.
Oh, no, like,
Right.
Make out of it, right. Right. And then just, what'd you say, put a space in there?
Yeah,
Make
the
it
space.
We need it with the space in front of it.
Just put a
Space,
space.
a dash,
Put a what?
a space, a dash.
Right. So I put a
Anything
space.
that's.
So now it's right up here on top.
so you got both.
Right.
That's a great tip.
Okay. Now what I do is I put, I have a tendency to have too many items in my dock. For me, it works. So I just make sure I have disk utility in the dock and let's see some of the other things. Sometimes I usually have airport utility in there, disk utility, and that's about it, I guess. Oh, and QuickTime Player 7, because I use that quite often.
George, could you show me how, or show everybody how to put the folder on the dock?
Need to put this in the dock?
I want a folder on the dock which you put several things into.
folder on the dock.
Just create a folder and drag it.
So let's say I want to put this folder in the dock, I guess. I just drag it to the dock on one side here, right?
George?
Yeah,
I don't think that
right here.
No.
You cannot drag it to the applications
Section,
part of
okay.
the dock. You can drag it to the bottom part or the right-hand side.
Okay.
Right. So you can see I've just put that folder in the dock.
Okay, so when you close it, it'll stay there.
Right.
You can stay there, and those applications that are in that folder, you have to click in the document space of the dock, because that's where that folder will reside, not in the application space.
Okay. You can't put a folder in the application.
George, can you go to the top menu?
Now you can see that I have set, this is one of the things that were, the changes available in our Capitan, is you can hide your dock. I get so many comments on my dock all the time that I've decided to hide it from the group.
George, go to the Go menu.
Go where?
To the Go menu.
Yeah.
And that's another quick way to get to the utilities folder,
Oh.
or to other folders.
Right now, also if you go to this folder and you hold down the option key, you can get to the library folder. See if the library folder shows up. So there's a lot of ways to skin the cat. Yes, sir.
Sam Johnson, I switched to a new backup drive for Time Machine, and my old one keeps showing up. I haven't done a backup for 180 days. How do I get rid of it? My old backup drive keeps popping up. The new one's there too. That's why I got two options.
Oh, so you didn't delete the backup?
Delete the old one that it's looking for. It keeps looking for it. It says I haven't done a backup for 180 days on my old drive. I want to just get it out of the Time Machine.
Well, I don't have anything attached here, but go ahead. I think we have an answer here.
It's Marty. You just go to Time Machine.
Right.
And in that menu like it was just showing us. George, you click open Time Machine on the top there, open preferences. Then on the top side, it'll say remove, add or remove disk.
Oh, okay.
Just remove your old disk, and then it goes away.
All right.
Yeah.
Just want to get rid of the message that keeps coming up.
Where he is on the top there.
Should
So
be able to
you hit options, correct? And it will be in here?
No, it'll be on the top, where you add a disk. Right
Okay.
up there at the top.
Right here?
Yeah, if there were if you had two disks,
Right.
it would be the option to add.
Right.
It says it there, right, doesn't it say add disk?
Okay, any other, we have a couple minutes, any other questions?
Probably how I added the new one, but
Carl?
I've used the same external drive on a Time Machine for several years. And is there a way to check verify that it's in sync with your iDrive on your computer?
Is there a way to verify?
Whether your Time Machine, since it's, sort of all, I've been using it for years, whether it's in sync with your
Yeah,
iDrive on your computer?
open Time Machine.
See what those Time Machine.
Yeah, you can open, and then you go all the way up through the list, all the way up to all the windows that show up,
Yeah,
and it'll, you can go back to day one.
but you don't really know if you have any glitches or anything on the Time Machine disk, do you, that way?
It
Well,
will
you can-
work.
Try restoring the file.
You can go, you can begin to compare back and forth. But that's what I do periodically, just to make myself feel better, to see if it's really
But
doing
you can
it.
also do this utility on the Time Machine.
What's that?
You can also do this utility on the Time Machine.
Verify.
Verify?
Verify this.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Is everything, okay, I don't have a disk utility, but what was just said, I think I have a disk utility down there someplace. It would show up on this side right here.
When it's plugged in.
Now you can't, don't forget, like Jerry said a few weeks ago, forget the repair disk utility thing that we've been talking about for years. You know, it's a non-issue. You don't have to worry about it. The Apple Store's always said that, and we've always pushed to use it periodically, but they've just taken it away from us.
I was just wondering why some people use Super Duper. Is it instead or in addition to Time Machine?
If I had Super Duper attached, if I had the external hard drive that I had Super Duper attached, let's say my hard drive died. My hard drive on here died, okay? And I needed to get to something right away, okay? I could hold down, I think, the Option key and start the computer, hold down the Option key, and it will show up within a few moments the different drives that are available, and then I can open up and work on the external hard drive. It'll be a lot slower than the internal hard drive.
So it gives you immediate.
Yeah. Yes.
What are we supposed to be using instead of Adobe Flash?
At the moment, nothing. Just, and it should only be for a few days. And I'm not, what should we use instead of Adobe Flash? No, but you can go into Google and download, what did I say it was? Chrome.
Google
And
Chrome.
Google Chrome. And then you'll be fine. You can use that. You might be, maybe in the long run we should do that anyway. Yes.
Can you refresh my memory as to how I make the library permanently appear? You know, as a code menu?
Option click. Oh, we make it permanently?
Permanently.
I don't remember.
I don't remember. either.
Bob, do you remember? Anybody remember?
I didn't know it was possible.
Yeah, it is. We covered it earlier, I don't remember.
Well, it's great.
Ask Jerry.
No, well, no, we can actually, Google it. How to make library permanently appear. And now Capitan. Tip to access the library folder and now Capitan. Okay, that's how it is. Okay, let's see what this one says. This folder, the hidden due to root level position, they don't really want you in that folder very often. You can cause trouble. 2 ways to access it. We showed you the option. Library appears on the go once you hold the Option key. Show the library folder constantly in OS X. Okay, here we go. Open Finder, Command Shift H. Anyway, here's the way to do it. So just Google it and it'll show you how to get it permanently on your computer. And that's pretty much any question you might ever have. We still like you to come to the meetings, we say. We can learn something from each other, yes.
The
Don?
calendar, since they added maps to OS 10, if you set a calendar event, the sub-menu is location. I always used to put notes in there, and that's no longer possible. Let's say you went to the dentist, and you keep your old note, and you want to say that you had a cleaning. Well, if you start putting that in the location thing, it's going to search for dry cleaners and everything. So you can't really put a note in there unless it's something that Apple cannot find a place.
Put it in notes.
Isn't there a note area to put it in?
In the calendar?
Yeah.
Yeah, down at the bottom. Down at the bottom, there's a notes thing.
So wait a minute, what we're talking about
Create a new
calendar?
calendar event. On a
So we're
line
gonna
of
make a
days.
new event. Add notes,
There you go.
Oh, add notes.
add notes right here. Just click on it. Is anybody I have a question, is there anybody here that's on El Capitan that's having problems with their mail crashing? So I am.
Well, I did, and that's why I took it off.
You what?
I did, and that's why I took it off.
Took what, LCAP or
Okay,
mail?
yeah.
Mail?
There are known problems with Gmail and with POP servers if you're still on the POP server.
So you went back to Yosemite?
Because what triggered it was actually it was an email I was trying to send one of the members. And I put it, and then something else came up, and while I was trying to get him all the information, he was explaining how to convert a PDF picture back to a JPEG. And so I had to put it in the draft folder, and although I deleted it from the draft folder, it keeps showing up in full screen, and then when I close it, it forces mail to quit.
Is this a Gmail?
I'm not sure.
It does, on POP, I put El Capitan on a club computer, and I put my Naples Freenet account, and I've not had any trouble with it as a POP account. I don't use Gmail.
Yeah, they don't know what the problem is. I spent hours on the phone with that.
'Cause I have a Genius Bar appointment on Friday. Any updates as to, because I haven't been in the Apple store in about a week or so, any updates as to what's happened with the one-on-one? I think they don't sell it anymore. And I think they're still biting by
They told
the...
me that I can use my one-on-one until it expires, but they're not gonna sell them anymore.
Okay.
They would honor it.
They talk about a replacement or anything?
No,
If there's anything
because
else?
those guys supposedly don't know anything.
They're doing workshops now.
Yeah,
that's workshops.
Yeah, you have to sign up for the group.
I signed up for a workshop and I was the only one, so that worked.
Yeah,
They said that one-on-one is not being used very much, so that's why they're going away from it.
yeah. Actually, the workshops can be as good as the one-on-ones because they encourage you to come in and with a project, work on the project. And if you have a question while you're working on your project, they'll have somebody available to answer it. So it's almost
Still gonna charge $100?
What?
Are they still gonna charge for the group the $100 each?
No.
No,
Is it
it's
for
free.
$100 a year?
I think it's free.
That's not even selling.
Now you're talking, they're losing money.
Probably the cost of the
Welcome back. Don?
One thing that has changed today, I talked to Apple Care, and you used to, when they wanted to see your screen, you downloaded something, you clicked on it, and then when they were looking at your screen, everything went blank except what you were working on. But today, I didn't even, it said at the top I was talking to them, but the screen stayed the same. And the only thing they came up was they had a big arrow. But in the past, it always went blank, so it was easier to work with. So if you're gonna call Apple Care, you might close some windows or whatever, it's less confusing, just leave the one that you're concerned with.
Yeah, I find, I have a lot of luck calling Apple Care, and I find sometimes it's a lot easier than going to the store with all the mass confusion.
Oh, for sure.
So it's, and they, they'll share your screen, and work on whatever the problem is.
If you're past the date on having that extended warranty at Apple Care, they will provide it when you call, but it's like $27 or $29. It used to be $19, but they'll work through that problem.
And they'll keep that alive, that event alive until you're satisfied.
Yes.
So if it takes you
Even if
3
you
months
call
to
back.
salve it, you don't have a charge for the next time you call.
And that's easier than going to the store with your, many times.
If anybody's, it's interesting, there's a promotion out there right now that I find a little interesting, because I'm always hoping or wanting to buy something. There's a promotion out there that is quite appealing. Discover Card. From now to the end of the year, in other words, you can walk into the Apple store right now, and if you get a new Discover Card, from now to the end of the year, and in any store, you can spend $10,000 and get a 10% discount. And so in other words, you can go in and buy an iMac or whatever, or if you need a computer, it could be a good time. And also, for 1 year, whatever you charge until the end of the year, you have from the date you open the charge, it's interest free. So you can take a year to pay
That's
that.
that's if you get a new Discover card?
What?
That's with a new Discover
New.
card?
Oh, new, okay, so, yeah.
So if I buy a car, I get $10,000 off?
You get if you charge, the guy will let you charge $10,000 of the price of the car. After you negotiate your best price. You gotta negotiate your best price first.
Now,
First,
is it up to $10,000 or does it have to be $10,000?
it's $10,000. It's up to.
Up to $10,000.
So anything you charge, in other words, I think it's a great promotion.
Because I'm thinking about buying a new iMac.
What's that?
I'm planning to buy a new iMac.
But George, you have to get a.
Tell them I told you to call. No, I'm kidding.
Dealers don't let you charge $10,000.
What?
Maximum 5 they let you charge.
No, it's 10.
I know, the car dealers.
Oh, the car?
Yeah, maximum 5,000 they let you charge.
You got
5,000 I got off.
First.
Well,
They got 1%,
but
charge
the
5,000.
real critical thing on buying a car, don't mention that until you negotiated your best deal. Oh, by the way, I want to put whatever I can on my credit card. And they should let you take it all the way up to the limit.
They don't.
They don't?
The dealers
They
won't.
don't do that.
2,500, I think, is all I could get.
I think we got 4,000 or 5,000.
5.
All right, so that's a challenge. If anybody gets more than 2,500, tell us the deal.
George,
Yes.
Many dealers restrict charge cards to parts and service, not to buying a car.
What's that? Parts and
They
service?
restrict it to parts and service, their charge cards. They don't accept them for buying a car.
Got a vehicle, but that's 5,000.
But it's optional for the dealer. I think every dealer could be different.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna buy the car, the minute he says, okay, you'll eat it probably.
George.
Buying a car is so obnoxious.
Can you do it for me? If you already have a Discover card, does this mean you have to get another one in order to qualify?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. I had a girl that was working for me one year, years ago, probably 20 years ago, and she really didn't know how to tie her shoelaces or anything. And,
And she worked for you.
yeah, and I hired her. And she went out, she told me, she said, I think I made a mistake. I bought a car on my lunch hour, and I gave the guy a few bucks down payment. So I called, and she said, I don't think I want that car. So I called him, and he said, she gave me the $20,000. I mean, you can give the guy $10 and he'll hold the car. She gave me $20,000.
They didn't want him to
And
go.
then she's gonna come back and pick it up.
Oh, my God.
I had to wash myself crossing the street for a while. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.